My name's Anton McConville. I'm a developer advocate with IBM Bluemix. I'm a digital designer and developer. I've worked with the web for about 10 years. Recently I've been dabbling with some Internet of Things stuff, but really my passion is with iOS apps at the moment. I grew up in Ireland, studied in England, and then moved to Canada, so please forgive me for my accent, and if I'm talking too fast or too weirdly, just let me know. I feel a little bit like I'm at a press conference or something here. I'm probably going to get a sunburn, so I can't really see you. But
can I suggest a sound?
Okay.
Move the microphone closer.
Okay, can you hear me now? How about now? Do I need to repeat all of that stuff? I guess yeah, okay. My name is Anton McConville. I'm a digital designer and developer with IBM and a developer advocate for IBM Bluemix. I grew up in Ireland, studied in England, and then moved to Canada, where I live now. So please forgive me for my accent, and if I'm speaking too fast or too weirdly, just please shout, repeat that or something. And I was saying I feel like I'm going to get a sunburn up here. I can't really see you guys, but so you have to just shout to get my attention. And this talk is all about a couple of things. It's about digital footprints, or what I conceive to be digital footprints. So this is the accidental data that we're making all the time. Your iPhone is collecting all kinds of health data. Whether it be energy that you're using or the steps that you're taking. And it's got a whole swath, it's got a lot of different possible pieces of data, dimensions that it can take. And that's not even including what you can access or what can be created from the watch. And in social data, we're tweeting and making posts on Facebook all the time, but the networks themselves, our social networks, are creating passive data and passive information about ourselves. And that really fascinates me too. And then, of course, there's location data, and that's a sort of fast-moving technology. With iBeacons, we're going to demonstrate some stuff with iBeacons in a little while. So just moving around, you're creating data about yourself. So the talk is in part about that, all of these little accidental pieces of data that we're creating and the potential for them for apps in the future. And the other side of it is, I mentioned this earlier this morning, the future app landscape. At the moment, we're still Googling a lot of things to get information about which restaurant to go to, or we're looking up in Foursquare or something for that. But wouldn't it be better if we just knew, if there was some context around us that could just tell us, hey, you're in this area, you'd probably really like this restaurant. So to have that sort of contextual influence in your applications, the personal influence, for it to really know you, again, we're creating all of this information, we're tweeting all the time, but nothing's really benefiting from those tweets. Increasingly, there are applications that, especially with Google, that are reacting to you personally. They're watching what you're doing, and your search results are tailored to you. You may not know that, but they are at the moment, and they've really been doing that more and more. But many other apps are not making that personal, using the power of your personality to really help create a good app for you. And of course, mobile goes without say, social kind of goes without say, but this thing at the end, this cognitive computing, that's a whole new dimension as well, where we can break down information using natural language and machine learning to try and best estimate what we want, what we could benefit most from an app based on where you are, who you are, and how you interact with people. And so I'm going to demonstrate some of those concepts in an app that I made, and the app was for an event, just an event like this on a grander scale. It's for IBM Insight, or Innovate conference, and it uses aspects of all of these things: location awareness, a little bit of cognitive computing, your social network, and your personality. And so the way that this presentation is going to work is I'm going to tell you a story of how the app came to be. I'm going to demonstrate the app. We'll look into the technologies behind it, how we built it, and then I'm going to speculate on how some of these things can be used in the future. So the story began late last year, and like all good software development stories, it came from a director with unrealistic expectations. So there was an event on February 22nd in Las Vegas, and they came, I think it was really close to Christmas Eve and in December 2014, and said it'd be great if we could have an app for this. So it gave sort of roughly around 60 days or less to make an app for the game. And I'd been earlier that year to South by Southwest, which is a big conference in Austin every year. And they'd use these things called iBeacons at South by Southwest, and they were making a big splash about it. Do you guys know what iBeacons are? Can you raise your hands if you know what they are? Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about them. So this is one right here from Estimote. I think it's a Polish company. So they're pretty small, and you put them on the walls around a building. And all they do is transmit a code, just an identifier so that you know which beacon it is that's transmitting the code. And they're pretty dumb otherwise, that's all they do. And the sort of brains is in your iPhone app. So as you cross the transmission, as you pass through the transmission, the app can listen to it, and then it can react based on the unique ID of that beacon. So as you walk around, it can trigger things for you to be aware of. A commercial use of them is to put them in a retail store. So you would have them above, say, running shoes. And as you walk past the running shoes, it'll tell you about the running shoes. Your app will tell you about running shoes. Or if you walk past shirts, it'll tell you about shirts or something like that. And this is directly from the Apple Store. It's originally an Apple technology. And it says, from welcoming people as they arrive at a sporting event to providing information about a nearby museum exhibit, iBeacon opens a new world of possibilities for location awareness. And they're being used commercially. So McDonald's used them. And one of the startling things for me I found recently was the McDonald's app is in the top 10 downloaded apps in the iTunes store. I don't know who has it on their phone. Does anyone have the McDonald's app on their phone, or is willing to admit to it in the audience? So I don't have it. I'm tempted to put it on there just to play, just to figure out what the attraction is. But they used it in the trial in Columbus in Georgia, where they were targeting advertisements using the app. And based on that, sales of Chicken Mac sandwiches went up 8%. So Ben, my colleague, was saying they're pretty unhealthy for these iBeacons. But it's a definite real-world use of it. They showed how it could be used commercially. If you go to the Facebook site now, the Facebook business site, you'll find this page. I took a screenshot of it just for this conference. And what they're doing is they're marketing their own Bluetooth beacons. You can get a Bluetooth beacon for your business in your mall. And with the Facebook app, people that are using the Facebook app and coming into your store can be targeted with coupons. And if you follow anything about iBeacons on Twitter, every single day there's some new use case, some business somewhere is using them. And I work with some corporations in my work as a developer advocate, and they're practically all using them in industry. So my use of them is pretty innocent and pretty unimaginative, I guess. But if you can imagine, there was a conference not unlike this with lots of booths around, lots of exhibitor booths around. And for us, our idea was that we would hide the beacons around the booths and make an app where you could go on a treasure hunt to find them. So it's a pretty simple idea. And we had this marketing campaign for Bluemix that was based on robots at one point, the robot apocalypse, and how Bluemix was going to be the platform that was going to solve the problem of the robot apocalypse. So we used that as a starting point for the theme of the app so we'd go looking for these robots around the place. And so this is a design track. This is my token bit of design stuff going in there. This is where I started getting the beacons, hands on the beacons, and started drawing things. I have two sons, and I've misspent their childhood drawing with them, so I've got some really cool resources for drawing robots. A stencil, and that's how I started drawing them. And we had 60 days. We couldn't labor over them, but this is what they looked like at the end. They're all sort of dimensioned the right way because they're going to have a little entry in their chests where you enter a code in. So they're all the same height. And I took the colors from Pantone's Colors of Spring for 2015, I think, which was really convenient because someone had figured out complementary colors for me. And this is what the app looked like. We're going to look at it in a second. So it has a little booklet that explains the game. It has a little needle that goes back and forth as you come close to the beacons. And then a scene where the robot appears when you get close to it, and you can enter a code into the chest of the robot. If you enter the correct code, you got entered into a prize draw, and our prize was a GoPro, something like that. And a little scorecard to let you know how many robots you caught. The more that you found, the more entries into the draw you got. So it's a really simple game, but it was done in 60 days, and it's really only 40 days. It spent 20 days getting approved for the App Store. And my colleague made an Android version. It took him 4 hours to get his on the Play Store or something. So I'd finished my app before his, but his was in the store first. And it was pretty cool as well going to Las Vegas and being the first ones into this exhibit hall. This was my sort of jaw was dropped at this big hall. It was really cool, and the view from it was amazing. And this is what the posters looked like in the end. They were supposed to be tiny, discrete little posters that were hard to find, but the marketing team got all over these robots and made these huge posters. If I'd known they were going to be drawn so big, I think I'd have spent more time drawing the robots themselves, but they looked fine. It was fun. So I'm gonna demonstrate this to you now. Yeah. Or maybe the Wi-Fi is working really slowly, so I'll try and explain what it's doing at the moment while it's doing this. It's loading data from Bluemix, our cloud platform, and at this point it's really hard to prove to you that it's not really this slow. It took a while because the Wi-Fi is slow. The whole app is data-driven, so the booklet is all just data. It's got a title, a picture, and a description. So I scroll through the booklet. You can see it's consistent all the way around. And this is all just, the images are just base 64 image strings put into a database. So it's downloading all of that data when you log in. And the idea is when it's on the App Store, you can't change anything, right? But if you data drive it, then, I'm gonna have to repeat this. Because you're not getting the effect of it. Dan, would you mind walking to the back of the room with the beacon? Obviously, I can't take the phone wandering around with it and share it with you. So what we're going to do is get Ben to walk with the beacon towards the phone when it logs in again. Just to show you how the location awareness is sensitive for it. So what I was saying there while this loads again is all of the data comes in from, it's data driven, so that if we wanted to change the robots or the booklet information, all you have to do is change a file and put it back on a server, and I'll show you that in a second too. When I log in here, what it's going to do is it's going to take my Twitter ID and go and use my follower information to find out some characteristics about me, why my followers are following me. So it's going to take their biographies, and I'll show you this pictorially in a second too. It's going to take all the biographies of the followers I have and pick out the most frequently occurring words, which sort of accidentally happens to sort of explain my interests. That's why they're following me, right? And we'll see that. And that's some of the accidental information that I think we create as we work with Twitter. So it's going gathering some personal information from me as I log in. And in theory, it would record the footsteps as well. It's using HealthKit to record your footsteps as you walk around. Obviously, it's static on the table, so I programmed it to say it's going to do 7 footsteps or something. But it's doing all of those things. It's collecting all of that information. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind walking sort of slowly towards the front with the beacon. We should see the needle start to twitch in a second once he gets a little closer. So, and then as you get really close, it's going to say we're here. And at this point, we should hear Watson speaking, but I think the projector interferes with it. So I'm using text-to-speech from IBM Watson. So I'm going to unplug it so that you can hear what happens.
You took 7 steps to find.
Did you hear it?
I have learned that you're interested in world, Ottawa, people.
So that's Watson Cognitive Natural Language speaking the things that it found out about me from Twitter, that I'm interested in the world and people. It's got that sort of information. And so this is by no means a proof that you can use this information accurately, but it's just a proof of concept to use all of that stuff together. So that's a demo of a little bit of cognitive computing, a little bit of location awareness, and a little bit of social media going on there. So that's the summary. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to dive in a little bit into how some of this stuff was put together using Bluemix, just to show you some of these things. So right here on this screen, this is the dashboard. The Bluemix dashboard shows all of your applications. I've drilled in here to the data application. It's got a Node backend. I'll show you in a second how you create a server, a mobile server for your app. It's got a Node backend, but this blue circle here, you can drag and drop JSON files onto that circle, and it will automatically populate the database. So all of this help information, for instance, is just a JSON file. So you can see there's 6 rows there, there's 6 help screens. So you describe your data in JSON, drag it onto the blue circle, and hey presto, it's in your database. So no programming needed. You can use iOS SDKs to access that data immediately, and I'll show you that. So for me, it's a front-end developer's dream, because you don't actually need to develop anything. You can really, within an hour, you can have some code and database, some data in a database to work with. You get sort of free analytics with accesses to the data, and it'll break it down by Android phone or iOS phone. If I go back to the dashboard here for this. And this is the structure of how things work on Bluemix. The 4 boxes at the top will let you create new apps, whether they're Cloud Foundry. So for most of my apps, they're Cloud Foundry apps. They'll just take a Node.js runtime or a Java runtime. I usually program in Node. Or a container or a virtual machine. You can add them in pretty easily. And when you do, you get a tile like this that represents your application. So this one's called Perception. And if I click on the tile, you can see that it's got a bunch of different services here. So one for data. This is the text-to-speech service that we were using there, so that you could hear the phone speaking. It's got push notification. It's got tools for testing. You can put a library on your phone so you can shake the phone, and it'll put it into a mode where you can scribble on the screen and send screenshots back really easily into your bug tracking system. And then it's got presence insights. So this is a really cool new service that I'm not fully exploiting yet. But with the Bluetooth technology, with the beacon technology, you can upload a floor plan of your building. So you can upload a floor plan of the conference area and mark on the floor plan where the beacons are. And once you've done that, you can see a heat map of where people have been walking around. So you can gather analytics on where they've been walking and tune your event experience accordingly. So if you know that they're walking more past a certain area, then you can put more signage there, for instance, or you can balance what's going on in the other areas to draw them in. So if you look at the iOS side of it, look at a couple of things. First of all, I'll get the right app open. So just initializing to use the Bluemix services is relatively straightforward. You load in that there's a bunch of frameworks available. So the data framework, the file sync framework, the location framework for the presence insights, and the push notification framework. You can pick and choose which of those you're using. There's one in here for Watson as well. And then just in the initialization part of that, if I go to the app delegate screen, this might be hard to see. Really hard to see. I won't dwell too long on this. You get an API keys for the Bluemix services. So you just register with those, initialize the services with those. And then querying the database is pretty straightforward.
Could you please change to presentation mode? Export preferences, editor. Export to the left. Preferences. Text editing. Lines, fonts, and colors. No, actually, one tab to the left. It's the other tab to the left. Fonts and colors at the top. Top.
Not text editing.
Oh.
You said fonts and colors.
Yeah.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
There's a presentation large. Thank you. Or maybe not the really large one. Can pick the other presentations. That's too large.
Okay. I'm really not going to dwell too long on it. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that just this line here, that's how you initialize. This is how you query the database. So I'm making a query on a robot object, a remote robot object. And so I told you that all the data was stored in JSON format. And there's a little hook in here that'll do the decoding from JSON into native Objective-C for you. There's also Swift libraries for all of this stuff as well. And I'm just doing a query for those objects in the database, getting back an array list, and then I'm iterating and putting it into, using it throughout the app at that point, so I'm getting the name of the robot, the description, the mugshots, and the beacon codes and stuff like that. So it's pretty straightforward to access the data from there. It's also pretty straightforward. It's pretty similar with the push notifications. There's an API for that as well to register for them, and you just use standard push notification calls thereafter. The text-to-speech stuff is pretty neat as well. So if I go into the robot view, this is what's involved in it. Once you pull the library in, it's just a matter of this call to be able to speak any message. So it's really, really fast. I'd never used this before a couple of weeks ago. And in 10 minutes, I had speech coming out of my app, and I think it's pretty hard to do otherwise. So it's really cool. It comes with different accents and stuff as well, and different languages. I'll just pop back to Bluemix to show you some of the stuff in the catalog there. So the way that Bluemix is organized is it lets you create dedicated servers for your applications. And then in the catalog, there's a whole bunch of different services that you can easily bind in. So I showed you a couple with the location awareness stuff, with the database stuff. Some of those are automatically put into your app for you when you create it as a mobile application. But in the catalog, if it ever loads, there's a whole collection of Watson applications. It's taken a long time to load. So one of them is text-to-speech, like I was showing you earlier. And most of the Watson ones have this sort of format. They'll give you a demo in there. You can see, try it out, view the demo. I'll show you another Watson service in a second. So you can switch to Italian, say, and speak.
Consapevole del suo patrimonio spirituale e morale, l'unione si fonda sui valori indivisibili e universali della dignità.
So I have no idea what that's saying. Could be really rude for all I know. But you get the idea. It's pretty easy to use. There are JavaScript APIs. There's iOS APIs for that. I was showing you there how it's mining Twitter. And what I did was I took, I wrote, this is the first sort of app that I wrote on Bluemix a long time ago. It's a Node application. And what it's doing is visually going and taking your Twitter name and the bios from it. So if someone with a lot of followers in the crowd is willing to offer a Twitter name, I can test it out. Anyone got a Twitter name they can give me?
Justin Bieber.
Is that? Well, that's too broad. It's going to come back as well. We can try.
Can you use me?
Yeah. Like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So he has primarily his following is iOS developers, engineers, programmers. So you're pretty directed. You've got a little bit of Android going on in there too, Swift and so on. So I added in some Watson personality insights into this as well. And this is probably really hard to see from where you are. But there's these things. I don't know. Have any of you studied psychology at all? Hands up. So there's these things called the Big Five characteristics in psychology. And what this does is it analyzes the natural language in text and splits out what those traits are, measures the traits. So for this, you can see the emotionality in what was written in those tweets is 17%. People are usually pretty dry when they describe themselves. They're pretty unemotional with that. And adventurousness is 92% and so on. There's introversion and stuff like that. It's a really consistent way of measuring it, if nothing else. And with customers using this for customer feedback and user testing and all kinds of things, it's pretty versatile and pretty neat. And again, you've got APIs that just give you back this data, so you can mix it into your application pretty well. And there's lots of different angles that you can take Watson. You can train it yourself to analyze stuff. It's got a whole bunch of translation APIs in there. We've one customer that spends millions in translation, and they're really excited about using some of this stuff. So it's stuff that you're familiar with through Google or through other APIs, but this is using the machine learning and Watson's natural language techniques that the researchers in the IBM labs have come up with over the last little while. So all of those services are available through, the best place of getting access to them is through Bluemix. And you've got that combination of iOS APIs for them and the combination of the mobile-first APIs. I mentioned earlier when I spoke to you that Apple has a relationship with IBM for building enterprise apps. And again, I can vouch that quite a lot of our customers are using those APIs to build their own in-house apps. And so they're built to scale, they're built to be private, they're built to be reliable. And all of the stuff that surfaces through Bluemix is stuff that they've learned through building those apps. So I find it a pretty good place for building with. So that's the end of my product pitch and my little intro to Bluemix. And so I just wanted to finish off, and this is just pictorially what was going on in that profile words little example that I showed you, where we take one person's Twitter ID, find their followers, read their bios, and pipe it through Watson at the end. And you can do that with your own stuff as well. I just wanted to sort of think about the application of some of these ideas for the future. A couple of weeks ago, I had to travel to Washington, D.C., and I live in Canada, and the hotel called me. They wanted to trial this thing called the digital key. Have you got them in Europe, or have you seen them? So this is with Hilton Hotels, and they said, we're setting this thing up, we want to do a trial. And it kind of blew my mind. And the way it worked was that I have the Hilton app on my phone, and it invites you to check into your hotel. So I was in the departure lounge at Ottawa Airport, and I got an instant message saying, you can check in now, your room's ready, you can check in. So I checked into the room, and it gave me a screen like this and said, you have a digital key. So when I got to Washington, I got off at Reagan Airport. I got off there. There's a metro station right outside it. There was a 10-minute trip in the metro to the hotel. The metro stop was a block away from where the hotel was. I walked into the hotel, walked through the lobby, got into the elevator, went to my room, held my phone up in front of the door, and walked into the room without registering at the desk. And I know it sounds really trivial, but the actual feeling of being able to do that, getting off a plane, is magic. It's, you know, if you travel a lot, sometimes you just don't want to, you're wondering how to get the train from the airport, say, or get transport from the airport, and you're thinking about registering. Very often you're stuck at a desk behind, 3 or 4 other people waiting to get to your room. Sometimes they don't have a room ready. Just knowing that your room's ready and that all you've got to do is get off and walk, into the hotel and go up to it is different. It's very different. And I thought it was fantastic, but I think it's too small scale, because I think it could be much more than just a key to the hotel room. It could be a key to the whole city. My phone knows so much about me. It has Pinterest on there, on my Pinterest boards. 5 minutes left. On my Pinterest boards, there's vegetarian recipes. I'm a vegetarian. It knows I'm a vegetarian if I want it to access that information. It knows I'm a designer. It knows I'm a developer. It knows I live in Ottawa. I tweet every time I go running every week using from the Nike app. It automatically tweets. It knows I'm a runner. It could tell me as soon as I hold my key up in the door, as soon as I log in, there's some really cool hotel or restaurants around for vegetarians, and there's a brilliant running route just your distance. It could be so personal, and so it could make the stay a very different, very incredible stay. So I think it's thinking small scale, but it's definitely coming. And then just thinking about personalization, this is an advert from a Canadian grocery store.
Welcome. Take a look up there.
Lindy's Supermarket.
When you shop with the new PC Plus Rewards program, it's kind of like having your own personalized store.
I've loaded up my offers. 200 points for kiwis, avocado, 200 points for every $1 spent. It knows exactly what I want to shop for.
Because that's really what PC Plus is. It's like your own personalized flyer where you earn points on all the things that you buy most.
I can't believe how many points I'm earning.
It's free, it's easy, and you can get your card right here in store.
And it's awesome.
And it's awesome.
And that guy's called Galen Weston. He used to be one of the most eligible.
Welcome. Take a look up there.
Lindy's
Bachelors in Canada. Canada was really unhappy when he got married. Women in Canada were really unhappy when he got married. But you can see, again, very personal. They have personalized grocery stores. And again, I've been working with retailers in the US that are doing exactly the same thing. They're putting beacons in their stores, and they're making the apps be personal, remembering what people are buying all the time and suggesting things for them. And then this is a story from Canada. I don't know if it's the same in Italy or in Europe, but retail stores, clothing stores are closing en masse in Canada. So big name retail stores are closing. So this is a headline, a real headline from a web-based newspaper talking about some of those stores. The interesting thing is on the right, there's an advertisement for a Canadian company called Frank and Oak. which was born in the web, but now has 5 brick-and-mortar stores across Canada. And I listened to a speech from the CEO of Frank and Oak, who is a designer. And what he said was, at the end of the day, when you have a web-based store, you just have inventory, and the inventory could be anything. The illusion that these other stores are under is that the inventory is differentiating them, but it's not. It's not differentiating them. What Frank and Oak does is the second you log in, the first time you log in, it'll ask you for your dimensions, it'll ask you for your tastes, and every purchase you make in it, it's remembering. And there are humans behind it too. But it's making it very, very personal. It's suggesting things that it knows you'll like. And it's growing because it has, the clothes are so tasteful. It's like a tailor. It knows your dimensions, it knows your tastes, and it's growing because it's so personal. So that's how these things are succeeding, these stores are succeeding. So just in summary, we talked a little bit about the possibilities from social data, the passive social data that we're creating all the time, the location data. I demonstrated some of that in action. The health data is in the phone as well. It should be counting the steps, and I think if I'd got it to the microphone sooner, you would have heard that. But just in that case alone, with health data, for monitoring elderly patients remotely, for just watching how you're working with your phone every day, how you're living, the potentials are huge. And just as a reminder, my view, and I think the view that most people have, is that the future is contextual, personal, mobile, social, and cognitive. And you can see that this is the world that IBM Bluemix is living in. Lots of other platforms probably too. But I just showed you today how it sort of ties together. And that's all I've got. Thanks for listening.